We hebben het tot nu toe steeds met Koert over de natuur versus de techniek. Maar de vraag is natuurlijk, is de natuur niet ook een vorm van een ontwerp? We gaan niet beginnen over religie, dat mag iedereen zelf weten. Maar we gaan het wel hebben over hoe je naar natuur kan kijken. Moet je dat zien als iets totaal abstracts dat geen enkele vorm van ontwerp in zich draagt? Of zou je daar als ontwerper iets van kunnen afkijken? Zou je een methodiek eraan kunnen ontlenen? En onze volgende gast die is daar op een hele fundamentele manier mee bezig. Met het bedenken van nieuwe materialen, maar ook met het bedenken van nieuwe ontwerpprocessen. En om een beetje haar te introduceren hebben we een korte instart.
Technological singularities propose that the nature of humanity itself will change at certain tipping points in machine evolution. In fact, in the last 30 years or so, advances in biotechnology have collapsed the gap between technology and nature. We depend so much on our environment for our own future that we must learn how to design and engineer with a technology of nature so that we can construct and shape our own environmental futures. The only question now is just how bold are your dreams?
Dames en heren, Rachel Armstrong. Rachel, welcome. Do sit down.
Good evening.
You had a terrible flight, but you're here. We're glad you're here. Well, you asked the question, so I ask it to you. How bold are your dreams?
Well, we're facing a really huge challenge right now. The way that we work is reverse terraforming the planet. I mean, the technologies we have, the way that we think, are really limiting our capacity for survival. We're talking about going to Mars and setting up colonies and the moon. We can't handle our own planet. So where are we going wrong? I mean, what we were asking Kurt earlier is, where do nature and technology connect so that we can completely change the impacts that we're having right now? And the way they connect is through matter. But obviously, the way we've been thinking about the material realm needs to change. So how might we do that? And one of the things I've been exploring is how we can think of nature itself as being a kind of technology through a different form of computation to the one that we work with today.
Computation as in counting, as in
as
the
in
math.
Counting, yeah. I mean, so like we go to school and the first thing that we learn to do is to count. And we really should be asking ourselves, well, why are we doing this? Why are we counting? Well, we're counting so that we can sort and order the world. And then we should ask ourselves, well, what are we counting? Because that gives us a value landscape. So we might count pieces of paper or glasses or tables or chairs or people in a room. You notice there's something in common with that. They're all objects. So we value objects. What we find much more difficult to count is things like air, sunshine, feelings. In order to count those and to value them, we have to turn them into objects. In other words, we're factoring out environment in everything that we do. So how do we actually go about thinking of technological processes that combine the traditional world of technology that we're used to with the technologies of nature that we've actually not had access to? How do we build new kinds of technologies that will give us a life-bearing world?
Do you believe that mass actually exists in the universe? Do you think that nature has numbers?
Nature can be described through numbers because that's our language, but nature has its own way of counting. Nature counts with matter, and it counts with matter through repetitions. So that's things like footsteps, heartbeats, pulses, blinks of an eye, orbital trajectories of planets. All those things are forms of counting that nature does. And what that does is it introduces a new dimension into technology, which is to do with space and time. And when we start doing that, we actually start to provide ourselves with a portfolio that can complexify the world, not abstract it, which is what we do with the computer down there. And if you notice something about that computer down there as opposed to you or me, that computer down there is an inert object. Okay? We like to freeze things. We're good at doing that because we're abstracting so much. But we're much less good at dealing with things that move and are lively. And so that this other kind of computation that discusses matter actually starts to design with living things.
So by looking at nature in this way, not through numbers but through repetitions, for instance, we can learn a new way of designing.
Exactly.
We can change the world of designing in a different way.
We can get a new tool set, one that inherently links the kinds of ideas that Kurt says, that there's technology and there's nature, and there's actually a synthesis between the two of them where they're indistinct. We've always worked with nature as a kind of technology. Soil in agriculture is a technology. We just don't have a mathematical language for that. So we've kind of dropped it from our portfolio of practices. There's some weird things happening that if we actually dig quite deeply, we can start to see where these issues that we're currently facing may actually have different kinds of innovation and solutions.
It's still quite abstract.
It is still
It's
quite
interesting,
abstract.
but we're still in the abstract world. Now, we've been here for quite some time, and the universe has been here for quite some time also. But what never changed is matter, because there's only so many elements, there's only so many materials and molecules. That has never changed so far.
Oh, but no. In the 1980s, there was a Nobel Prize awarded to Jean-Marie Lane and his team. And for the first time, they developed something called supramolecular chemistry. In other words, they were bringing materials that hadn't existed together in that way before in the history of the universe. We have got a completely new tool set that allows us to do art and music and sculpture and all kinds of design practices that we're just not tapping into because we haven't developed the language and the thinking to help us move into those terrains. And perhaps we don't even know
So those are your bold dreams. You actually wish to create new matter, new molecules,
new combinations
new
of things.
Even.
The complexification of materials. We tend to simplify and abstract. What gives life to the world is actually all those wonderful, diverse relationships that come with lively things.
It sounds like alchemy, like the Middle Age, making gold through a machine.
Oh, but that's a form of purification. This is a form of complexification. Let's call it a different kind of soil making. We're making environment. The design process is actually within a context in which if we create the right environmental conditions, then objects start to appear in those lively landscapes. So think of soils, and you can sow seeds all over the soils, and it's the context of the soils and the seeds that generate the plants from them. So it's displacing design a little bit into a lively world.
So tell me, let's make it very, very concrete.
Yes.
So how does it work? You want to make new materials. You do this by looking at nature, not through numbers, but through repetitions and a different view. Okay, we'll make this
really
on a very, very daily basis. You come into your office. You work in an office?
I do.
You take coffee or tea?
Tea.
Tea, of course. Then you put off your coat. You start sitting down. Then what happens? What do you do?
Phillips developed something called the microbial home, where essentially the composting process all these metabolic processes were exchanging all the kinds of things that were happening in a kitchen or an office for metabolisms and not fossil fuels. So essentially, if you actually think about all those processes that you might need in order to perform your work, not happening through electricity and burning of fossil fuels, but actually the living processes of things. So Philips had designed a whole kitchen based around this idea. And we've got people like Philip Beasley that are designing actually really beautiful environments, not just nasty, smelly things that you want to stick underneath the sink and cover with a nice facade. But he was actually creating beautiful soils with cybernetics and little wet organs with them that functioned like a giant interior of a nose that can smell and hunt out your carbon dioxide and turn it into tiny sculptures. I mean, so, that we can start to think of enrichments of environments. So, for example, can we save the city of Venice by growing a smart soil in the waters around it? Or can we create a new island for Venice by bringing together the plastics and the algae that are clogging up the waterways by using the algae to form a big natural net, trap those plastics, sink them into the earth, and create new materials and conditions for inhabitation.
So what you actually left behind you is the thought of a machine.
Yeah.
You say, well, nature can be a machine.
It could be a machine.
Soil can be a machine.
Soil can be a
the
machine.
air can be a machine. Anything can be a project of design, actually.
Yes. I mean, it's knowing how to tap into that to help it do work. I mean, essentially a machine is something that performs useful work. And we're equipped with a tool set that allows us to perform useful work with objects, not with the air, not with, we're starting to develop, solar technologies, wind generators. We've always had those, but now we have biotechnology. For the first time, we're actually able to shape and develop these things on a scale that has been previously unreachable. And so it's opening up all these new possibilities for design, and particularly design through a different kind of computation.
Because you mentioned it already, the challenges that we face as a species are quite big at the moment.
Huge.
We need new fuel.
Yep.
We need to recreate our environment, or at least save our environment. We need new technology to have food. So your dreams have to be bold in a way.
Yes, they do.
So name me one thing that you're currently working on that is actually there. What is your biggest achievement so far?
I would say it is looking at, let's say, the lively world as a kind of computation. We've just won an EU grant, a 3.2 million euro, to look at how we can create installations in the home, these living technologies, that use metabolism, programmable organisms, to take your dirty water, extract the phosphorus from it, clean the water, and then use the muck to make new kinds of soaps that enrich the environment rather than destroy it. So that's actually a project underway. We're starting in April.
That's not a machine, that's a whole process.
It's a system, it's an ecology. It's an ecology that we put inside your home so that, for example, you asked me what would happen when you go to the office. Well, you're actually inside a living thing. It may as well be a jungle. It could be a savanna. It could be, if it's really cold, it could be some kind of Arctic desert. At the moment, this is a kind of an alkaline desert, lots of concrete. There's not much living here. The most lively thing in the room, Kurt would say would be you, okay? So our buildings are not lively, but there's no reason for that. We know how to compost. We know they know that compost can generate heat. We can use that heat to heat our water. Why are we burning fossil fuels when we can do that? So it's really partly a way of thinking and also developing a tool set that opens up these new opportunities for design, for innovation, where there is, as Next Nature proposes, no separation really between what we would traditionally call technology and what we might think of as the living world.
So actually you're also challenging the world of designers into a new way of thinking and a new way of doing what they do. Kurt, ik word toch ook nerveus. Want ik bedoel, de toekomst is leuk en ik ben voor de toekomst en de toekomst is gaaf. Maar jij zei eerder, het mag ons ook wel voorbij groeien. Het mag ons ook wel overheersen.
First
Dat
of all,
is niet erg.
I predicted the roller coaster. I think we just made the looping.
Ja.
Yeah, well, indeed, in the end, I'm hoping for balance. You know,
Balance between human beings
nature,
and
technology, people and the environment. And we can do it because we learn here that actually any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from nature. So we are now I think we are in the primitives of a next nature, and we still have a long road ahead of us. But then if I have to choose, do you want to go back to nature and become a caveman again? Or do you want to go forward to nature and live in the world Rachel is proposing? Then it's quite an easy choice for me.